Alright guys, Mr. Slyway here. Time to talk about passions kind of starting to boil over prior to the Civil War as well as the election of 1860. So pay attention. We're going to get into the Civil War soon, so that's going to get a little more complicated. So make sure you're following along, okay? Alright, so 1859, John Brown, God's angry man. Remember Kansas? He was arming anti-slave individuals, ended up massacring individuals, cutting them apart with broadswords, and then he just disappears, right? So in 1859, John Brown comes back. He shows up in West Virginia and just absolutely ends all hope of some sort of compromise between the North and the South when it comes to slavery and issues along those lines. So what does John Brown do, and why is he important? Well, during that time that he disappeared from Kansas between, then and 1859, he'd been studying slave uprisings, armed slave rebellions in ancient Rome, in Haiti, all over the world, kind of learning how they were done and how they managed to overthrow the government in which they were, kind of being oppressed, right? And he was collecting financial backing. He was collecting money from northern abolitionists, people who were already anti-slavery. All right, so he was building up kind of this military arsenal, if you will, and he had an overall goal to invade the military store point or arsenal in Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. His goal was to take it over, to arm all of the African Americans in the South, all the slaves in the South, in West Virginia and in Virginia, and have them rise up against the government in some sort of massive rebellion. Okay? He hoped to start this uprising. He takes his sons, he takes some other individuals, and they raid this armament in Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. It does not go well. They get themselves trapped. They have to barricade themselves into the actual federal arsenal in West Virginia. And the President Buchanan, calls the Marines in. Okay? The Marines are led by a man named Robert E. Lee. Remember that name. It'll come back. It'll be kind of important. Robert E. Lee and his Marines kill John Brown's sons. They kill some of the individuals who are rebelling with John Brown, and they capture John Brown. So Robert E. Lee captures John Brown at sword point, actually. John Brown is taken back. He is tried for treason or crimes against the U.S. government, and he is ultimately hanged. He dies due to hanging at a military base. Okay? Now, why does this matter? Well, John Brown is going to be condemned by both Lincoln and Douglas, Stephen Douglas, as somebody who committed a crime, someone who was a murderer, right? The South, though, is going to view John Brown as a traitor. He committed a crime against the government. He deserved what he got. The North, on the other hand, is going to view John Brown as a martyr, someone who died for a better cause, for a greater cause. And in fact, they view him as this great individual who gave his life for the cause of freeing slaves, of getting rid of slavery. So there's a huge divide between the North and the South when it comes to John Brown, what he did, and what happened to him. On top of that, Southerners started to fear that there were all sorts of, spies or northern plants in the South who were going to rise up and cause slave rebellions all over the South. So people in the South started to really distrust each other as well during this time period. And they started to call for full secession from the North. This is something we've been hearing for a while, but it seems to be getting more and more realistic at this point. Right in the middle of this mess, you get the election of 1860. Okay, probably one of the most important elections in U.S. history, if not the most important. The election of 1860 is really important because of the tension between the North and the South and the question of what's going to happen with slavery. You have three individuals running against Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln is going to run as the Republican candidate from the North, from Illinois, all right? He tells people his goal is to stop the spread of slavery in the new territories, but he promises the South and Southern leaders that he will not end slavery in the South, that he will stay away from it, that it will not be touched, okay? Southerners don't trust him. They do not trust Abraham Lincoln. They start to spread propaganda all over the South that he is, quote unquote, a black Republican, that he supports African Americans. They start to spread rumors that he's actually the devil, and that if he wins, the world will end as we know it. They went to really extreme measures to try and keep Abraham Lincoln out of office. The Democratic Party, on the other hand, is going to split in half over the question of slavery. You're going to get Northern Democrats and Southern Democrats. Your Northern Democrats are going to run Stephen A. Douglas. We talked about Stephen Douglas, okay? Talked about popular sovereignty, the idea that people should be allowed to choose whether or not to have slavery. He's going to be your Northern Democrat. Your Southern Democrat is going to be John C. Breckinridge of Kentucky. So the problem here is that the Democratic Party is going to split in half. So what's going to happen there is that people who vote for Democrats are also going to split in half. So what happens is, effectively, it makes Abraham Lincoln the president. All the Republicans vote for Abraham Lincoln. He gets all of those votes from abolitionists in the North. The Democrats split in half. So half the votes go to Breckinridge, half the votes go to Douglas. Neither one of those individuals has enough votes to beat Abraham Lincoln. The reason this is kind of ironic and funny is that Abraham Lincoln's only votes come from abolitionists in the North. He didn't even appear on the ballot in most Southern states. So when Abraham Lincoln wins, Southerners are confused. They're like, who is this Lincoln guy? How did Lincoln win? This can't happen. He wasn't even on the ballot, right? So Lincoln wins, gets the Northern votes. Southerners believe that their way of life is over, that they're done, slavery's done, their income from cotton and plantations are done. They believe that there's no chance for them to put things back together with the North. So South Carolina, always South Carolina, right? They're always screwing things up. South Carolina is the first to secede on December 6th, 1860, right after the election. They secede, they break away from the United States. Slowly, other southern states will follow and form the Confederate States of America. They will elect Jefferson Davis as their president. We will get into that later on. In all, 7 states will secede. 8 slave states will remain in the North, along with 4 buffer states. We'll get into that, okay? The current president is still President James Buchanan. Okay, Lincoln has not officially taken office yet. Buchanan is asked, what do I do about the secession thing? And he states that seceding is illegal, but it's also illegal for him to stop it. So in other words, James Buchanan decides he's going to do nothing. He's going to wait for whoever the next president, Lincoln, to come in and deal with this mess because Buchanan doesn't want to. So Buchanan's going to go down in history as what's called a lame duck president, a guy who chooses to do nothing, to get nothing done. All right, he makes a decision to stay out of this mess. Problem for Lincoln is that Washington, D.C. is in the South. It is very much a southern place. It's in Virginia, okay, bordering Maryland. The majority of the people who work in Washington, D.C., at the White House and in Congress are Southerners. So Lincoln faces mass resignations, people quitting like crazy and going back to their home southern states. On top of that, Lincoln literally has to be snuck in to the White House for fear of being assassinated. People in the South really hate Abraham Lincoln, and this is going to cause even more of a rift as we move on between Lincoln, the North, and anti-slavery individuals, and the pro-slavery South, which has seceded now. Okay, this is going to trigger or cause the Civil War, which is where we will pick up next class. Hope everybody's doing all right. Make sure you're getting your work done. You had some video questions as well as a PowerPoint section of questions that you needed to get answered. Again, make sure you're getting this work done. I want to make sure you guys get credit for it, okay? Hope everybody's doing all right, and I'll see you guys on Thursday or Friday. Have a good one.